Welcome to Board Game Archaeology, where we play time-worn games from the past. I'm Hunter.
I'm Rob, and welcome to episode 100. And instead of reviewing Zelda, which you will be seeing in the future, Hunter and I are going to talk about our best, our favorites, and some of just the odd episodes that we've done and some of the games that we've done. We've created a list so we can go back to it. So if you see us shoot our eyes around, we're just double checking our list. But we wanted to talk about that first 100 episodes that we started during COVID back in 2020.
Yeah, we wanted to kind of say what we liked and didn't like about a lot of them, and we're going to save the worst of the worst and the best of the best for last.
Hmm?
But to start a list off like this, we felt like it would be good to bring up Shifty Gears,
Yeah.
a game that we still remember very, very vividly.
Flat out should have been named Shitty Gear. It's only one letter away. It just didn't work. You could only build your gears in one direction, and it got you excited because it was gears. It was plastic and moving parts. And if they could have just arranged it so it worked, it would have been better.
It just feels like one of those things that was mostly made. It was so close to being functional that it's really kind of tragic that it wasn't.
Yep.
And it's one of the reasons it sticks out in my mind because it's like, yeah, I really like those very tactile games like that, but unless you are just like cooperating with someone and trying to get it to work.
And that's what we did. It took us 20 minutes cooperating to do it, to get it to work. And it was really one of the hardest ones that we went, oh, I really wanted to like this game. And it really just bummed you out from the get-go. The next game I have is the Creepy Crawler Castle game. And it's one of those games that were in the magazine that I took my magazine apart, took the staples, Xeroxed it, went and got a copy made, and made the parts to it. And it was one where you had to get a victim to the castle, and you could not do it. We never once got the victim to the castle. It's the magazine of untried games. When you're buying a game in a box, it was play tested. Sometimes when you get them on the back of a magazine thing, it's not play tested at all. And that one certainly wasn't. And they had like four of them. We did three, I think, different ones, and two of them were playable. Somebody would win, and it worked. But this one was, in my opinion, totally unplayable.
Almost like a way to kind of make a proof of concept or something like that.
Used Frank Frazetta like art because Frank worked for Creepy and Eerie and stuff. Warren back then, Warren, and I'm sure that some of the imagery was either Neil Adams or one of the other people that drew a lot of that stuff.
And another one that we ended up remembering a lot about is the Scrabble crossword domino game, where yeah, I'm a very wordy person, English major type, but I had such a hard time playing it. It
And
was really difficult for us to play.
and being dyslexic, it just killed me.
Yeah, it's like sometimes I struggle with Scrabble alone, so the Scrabble crossword domino was a different realm for us. So
I'm sure there's an audience that really loves it and probably has contests about it, but I would not do well in those contests.
no, I would not do well either.
Yeah. Another game, Mind Maze. It was this plastic game with a magnet and a steely in it, and you had to get the steely around a maze. And the first time you see it, you go, oh my God, I got to have this. It's like $5 at a thrift sale, right? And this is going to be the coolest thing. It's plastic and it's got magnets in it, maybe like the old car things and horse things and stuff. And you get it and you just find it to be frustrating and not as cool as you wanted it to be. And it's funny, when we reviewed some episodes, I either liked things better because we were still in a glow of it or something or not, but how it changes after you replay it or rewatch things and go, yeah, that kind of bummed me out.
Yeah, I remember a lot of these ones that we'll bring up that kind of rubbed us the wrong way were ones that were close to being something better than they were. And Mind Maze was a lot of fun because it had that battleship quality where it's like you kind of are say you're rivaled up against a person. But with Mind Maze, it was just rather frustrating, or like it really kind of underplayed for us.
Yeah, and that's really my list of stuff for the worst. I think ours.
Not
You know,
the worst though.
well, not the worst. We're saving that to the end. So there's a lot of games that aren't great. I mean, there's a ton of Cadaco games that we did. I mean, a ton of them that were made for 4 to 10-year-olds. And if we were going to play them again, we probably wouldn't because they were just made for kids, and they weren't bad. They just weren't something that we would ever go back to. And it's a Cadaco game, you know. We did a lot of them.
We did so many, in fact, that we unknowingly, the first episode, we did a Cadaco game, which we didn't really process until today. Sinbad, both of one of our favorites, was a Cadaco game, and there was a little early signs, I'd like to think, because of the monsters that didn't exist in the movies.
Right, right.
There's little Cadacoisms in there, but it's funny to me that it was one of the first ones that came to mind that was one of our favorites.
It is. And then we get to our favorite games. And there's a lot of fun games that we played. And there's a lot of games we just love because of the aesthetics to it or the look of it. And we'll save our favorite to last. But Sinbad is one of our favorite games. It was our first one. It got us going. I didn't know it existed until 5 or 8 years ago when I was searching for something. It's right here. And I saw it and went, oh my gosh, it's a Ray Harryhausen game. This is fantastic. So it's going to have a soft spot for me to begin with.
Yeah, and it's things like Green Ghost too is like something I remember fondly, even though I don't remember particularly how it played because it had that Halloweeny theme, and sometimes the aesthetic can really carry a game for me.
Yeah, Green Ghost was one of those grail games for me where I've always wanted it, never had it. And it's fun. Even from Sinbad on, I've been adding and fixing pieces to games, and that was a fun one because it was 3D sculpting and resin printing and all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah, and I know that like we also really got into a couple of games that were sort of chess adjacent. We got into Smess and we got into Feudal. And those were very interesting because with Smess, a different take on chess was a very fun thing to play since we're both very familiar with like basic chess rules and sometimes it can get a little dense. So having something like Feudal even just to kind of like shake up your framework of thinking about it.
Yep. And Smess goes back in my future. My brother and I used to play. My brother and I used to play chess too, Rick, and he would always win. And then we played Smess, and I'm sure he always won that one too. But so that was a big nostalgic thing for me. And it's still a fun game, playable, and just like chess, you can learn it, and you can learn it good. Feudal is a game that I know I have to learn even better. We have a couple of viewers that have commented on Feudal, and we touched it, and we started to play it, but I can see that being a huge thing, where you could bring multiple sets like some of our viewers have, and do some wild things with it. And it's real strategy, right? It's not that locked down world. It's much bigger. It's kind of like when Halo came out, and that first player shooter opened up. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of that kind of world. It opened chess up a little bit.
Yeah, and so we know that we're really only approaching Feudal from that tip of the iceberg perspective. But even from that, it's like you really see how much promise is in a game like that. So that was fun to see too.
It was. Another one of my big favorites, and very, very obvious, is the Monster Old Maid set. I love the Monster Old Maid set, and sure, they got some of the monsters mixed up or titled wrong, but when you have Frankenstein and the creature and everybody on a set of old maid cards, nice big oversized cards, you cannot go wrong. And that I think is one of those pieces that will be with me till the end.
Yeah. And into some of the things that the games in particular that I've liked, we both really liked Lawn Darts, a game that is it's like some other games that we're going to cover where it's very skillful, like hands-on, and now that things are green out again, it'll be easier to cover those sorts of games.
Yeah, long darts are another thing that I grew up with, and we used to throw them 50 yards and try not to hurt anybody. But you know the stories about it. But still, fun game outside. Just be safe with what you play.
Yeah, and it was a fun one to shoot too, because we got to set up these shots where we go like, okay, so I think it's gonna land right here. So we'll have the camera like over here, and there's a lot of very careful throws in that episode.
That's right. Luckily, effects work can be done pretty well. And I think that's most of them outside of our favorite and our least favorite game. But first, I want to talk about some of our have to mention them, like the Rube Goldberg games, Mousetrap and Fishbait, and the one we haven't done yet, Crazy Clock, which is right up there above my head. Yeah, always classic, beautiful, fun games that I'll always love, and you can't not talk about them because they're just classics. And you know, it is what it is. Mousetrap will always be talked about, but we actually grew up with Crazy Clock, and that's why I'm excited to do the episode. And I didn't know fishbait existed until much later. And I did not bring NFL hockey into play now, and there's been a lot on TV in this house, but NHL hockey is it's a good game. It's the old metal figures skating and doing their thing, and that's another one that has to have a mention because it's something we all had, either that or the electronic football game, which I'm sure you'll see in the future too.
Yeah, and I was always horrible at those kind of the twisty, kind of like a foosball
Yeah,
and
mini
stuff like that.
foosball.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
very mini foosball, and I've always kind of been bad at them, but I do appreciate the mechanism at play there. It's
yeah.
fun. And some of the ones that I hadn't brought up were a lot of the ones that have a lot of skill, like dexterity ones, where balancing games, for example, like I know Breaking Point was one of those ones that I appreciated. It wasn't one of my
Oh,
favorite ones.
Tippet.
Yep, tip it. Things like that I've always appreciated. I'm hoping to do some more of those going forward. One of the next ones I know we're doing is going to be one that's more based on dexterity than it is rolling die. So
Yeah. I also wanted to mention like the $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, Planet of the Apes. They would have made my top list, but they really didn't have that playability that made the top list. They're there and I love them. Like Planet of the Apes, unfortunately, you got almost humans against humans. It's almost like the apes aren't existent in it. And Bionic Woman, I thought the gameplay was much more fun with the, gosh, there was so many dots on that board. It just, when you open it up, you go, oh no, what have I got myself into? But $6 Million Man reminded me of Man from Uncle and stuff like that, where it
mm,
had that playability and that sense of one way, easy play. But they didn't make the top list because the playability or enjoyment, but I still love them. Obviously, they're all right behind me.
well, in speaking of the ones we like and don't like, the ones because I think I want to say which one we didn't like the most first, because I think I have the least amount to say about it. Because we'll play you the noise again, maybe, unless we want to censor it out
Oh no,
entirely.
we'll play the noise again just so you get a true understanding on why it's our worst game that we reviewed the last 100 episodes.
Because that really is, it's basically solely the reason why. Because having to deal with that on top of the premise for the game, I just like. I saw it out and about in the wild in this last year, and I actually had to like point it out to people and go, "That's one of the worst games I've ever played." That
Yeah.
demonic noise comes out of that headset, and it's one of the ones kind of like Shifty Gears that just immediately pops into my head.
Yep. And this is the sound. Yep. That's the noise you're hearing. And it's haunting. And yeah, we're not going to play any more of it. It just makes you uncomfortable, and you wonder why you're doing it. But you're supposed to lip read why this icky noise is going in through your head, and the icky noise is so icky you don't even want to say what your thing. It was the worst game ever, and it shows by number. I think people can look at it and go, "No, we're not going to watch that episode. That's not a good one." But it is. It was an uncomfortable game. We didn't like it. And for our favorite game, the favorite game out of the first 100, and this is something that I know Hunter has a warm spot for because this is something I had a warm spot for. But darn it, it's just so playable.
Melee.
Yeah.
It's truly just one of those things that have consistently come up for us. And doing the episode, I've almost felt like doing supplementary episodes because it's like a quest pack and stuff. Just because it's like, I think about how much I've done Melee over the years, where it's like one
Right.
of the things where sometimes you can't talk some friends into playing D&D. It's too much for a lot of people. But Melee helped me get a lot of people into that world, in a world where it was hard to talk people into it. Not a lot of people had that.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Melee comes with wizards, and we will review this somewhere in the future. And it does come with a playing system, giving you more like your horses and your what weapons cost and everything what everything costs. So you can create this whole, it's called the fantasy trip, whole world with Melee and wizards. But you're talking a game that uses 3 6-sided dice or more if you're doing damage, but it's all 6-sided. And you got your strength, your dexterity, and when you get to wizards, you got some intelligence going too. And really, that's it. Everything is based on those three, and it works, and it's easy, and you can just start fantasy playing with young people right away, and you can change it to superheroes. You can duplicate the numbers. You can just do anything with it.
Yeah, it's such a versatile thing that like I know that when I introduced it to my cousin Creed, when I introduced it to him, it probably set off a whole us trying to make tabletop role playing games because it's like seeing that simple system going so far inspired a lot of people like us to try and make similar simple systems that were very approachable to people.
Yep, and available today at Steve Jackson Games. You can still buy the whole thing. They redid it a couple years ago digitally, and you can buy all the books and the modules and everything. And if you want to get into the easiest fantasy D&D playing system, this is it. It doesn't get much easier than this, really. And otherwise than that, thanking you guys, because that's really what we're here for. Is we wanted to thank you. We did 100 episodes. We still have stacks of games floating around the house that I'm tripping all over and making new pieces for. And we thank you as subscribers for coming on board and watching what we do, because we just do it for fun. And especially Millie is still watching our show. We did a little thing for Millie way back. Was it Tripoli? No, maybe.
I believe it was
I think it
Tripoli.
was. But yeah, she's still watching our show in her 90s and loves it, and we're so thankful that people watch it. And we hope you continue and tell your friends and family. We want to build up on it.
But thanks for watching.
Yeah, and if you want to know more about us, check us out at toyarchaeology.com. We're also on Facebook under Toy Archaeology. I also do another show on monster model building. If you're into vintage games, you probably know about the Aurora monsters. But yeah, thanks for watching. Check us out on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe, like us, tell your family and friends, build our subscription thing up. And thanks again for watching.
We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.